Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 15. This video might end up being a bit of a mishmash of random stuff. I just went around and did whatever caught my eye. We will of course take care of the red science production, since I managed to make a mess of that in the last one, but I will forget to move them over to the next grid belt for that perfect alignment I was complaining about. We will also keep on expanding the ring of towers, and the only reason why we won't be doing that for the entire episode will be the foundations. We have a lot of water to get rid of, and not enough throughput on their production capacity. But the most important thing will be the planetary shields. It's about time we denied access to our planets for the dark fog. Before we get started, I would love it if you subscribe to the channel, and clicking the like button will let me know that this video was worth making. If you want to help me make a living off this one day, please consider becoming a channel member, where you will get an early access to the videos as I make them, and for a one-time donation, you can find a link to my Ko-fi page in the description. But enough talking, let's get into it. Well, I think it's time I finally got around to naming the different celestial bodies in the star system. The central star will be called Olympus, while the ice giant will be called Zeus. The red desert planet will be named Vulcan, because that's where we will set up our furnaces once we start moving things off our home. Speaking of, our starter planet will be known as Juno from now on, and the pale desert will be Minerva. And that about covers the new names. Should be a lot easier to tell them apart from this point forward. We can also start making blueprints out of the tower arrays that can be considered finished. For now, these will only involve the smelting towers. We are not ready to start blueprinting assemblers yet. Whenever I make one of these blueprints, I really need to pay attention to the number of items that we are copying. We need to have 180 furnaces, and since all of them should have 2 inserters, we also need to make sure that we have the necessary 360 of those. Then we can check the number of belts and power poles, and if everything looks okay, we can save the whole thing. For now, we could only do this for the iron plates and the magnetic rings, but we will expand our book as the episode goes on. Next, let's take care of the red science. If you recall, I accidentally told the tower to bring in diamonds instead of hydrogen, and after switching them around, the belt filters got reset, preventing any production from happening. It also didn't help that I managed to put on the output inserters backwards. That should take care of everything. The labs are busy making cubes, and they are being fed back into the tower. Next on the agenda, the oil. Right now the only source of crude oil for our new refinery setup comes from the end of the old one, so it only gets scraps. But we need a steady stream of refined oil to keep the acid and the titanium crystals production going, so I went around and tapped into all the deposits I could find. I didn't really bother making it pretty, I just fed them all into any nearby tower I could find. Well, not just any tower, I tried to keep the permanent ones free of contamination. I tried to stick to towers that were only there temporarily. We didn't need to worry about giving these towers any delivery drones, the refinery tower should already have them at the ready. Plus this way we didn't have to give these towers any power. To keep expanding our smelting, we will need more substations, so I tried to make more of those. It's a bit of a hassle that we need long-range power poles to make them, but hey, it's a pretty high-tech item, so it was bound to be hard to get. Good thing we only need 4 per tower. Anyways, as I was going to make the power poles, I noticed that the foundation factories were struggling with steel. So I decided to divert some toward it, so it can keep going at full speed. Flying over the acid finally reminded me. When I first set up the titanium alloy tower, I forgot to give the acid collector the drones it need to deliver it, so we've been piling up acid without using it. Now it should be fine. And we have another dark fog base on the planet. This is what convinced me to do something about them. There is a way to prevent them from landing their relay stations ever again. Planetary shields. As long as we have even the tiniest amount of shield coverage over an area, that place is no longer accessible for the dark fog's landing stations. If we can cover a planet completely with a minimal amount of coverage, we should be able to prevent any future landings. So, my next task was to gather enough resources to create enough shield emitters. Thankfully, the community already established that we can create this kind of full coverage with just 8 of them. Now, keep it in mind, this is just enough to prevent landings, it is not enough to protect buildings from attacks. If the central hive ever gets angry enough to attack, we will need to make sure we can defend ourselves, the shields will not be enough by themselves. There were a couple different shield arrangements floating around on Reddit, but I didn't really like those. As you know, I like to keep the equator free, so I can put my manufacturing towers there. And even more importantly, I like to keep the 2 poles unobstructed. I want to have logistics towers there one day. And all the arrangements use the poles to make the shield coverage, and some of them even use the equator. So I started thinking, how could I find the points on a sphere where 8 points are completely equidistant from each other? Let's think outside the box. Instead of a sphere, we need a 3D shape with 8 corners, and map those corners to the sphere surface. What shape has 8 corners? A cube. So, if we had a cube inside a sphere, and the corners were all touching the sphere surface, at what points would those corners be? Now, it's been a good 20 years since my last geometry lesson in school, so I couldn't even start with making proper calculations. All I knew was that we had 8 points. Well, since it's a cube, 2 of those corners will inevitably land on the same line. So we had 4 pairs that need to be along the same longitude lines. Wait a second. We have 4 prime meridians. It's those thick lines going up to the poles. We can use those to place the pairs of corners of the cube. Now we just need to find the correct latitude. And that's where I ran into problems. As I've said, it's been 20 years since my last geometry lesson, and even then I was pretty bad at it. So I just started at 45 degrees latitude, and worked my way down until I found a coverage that was acceptable. After posting my findings on Reddit, someone did calculate the correct position, and it was around 35 degrees. My emitters went on the 36-degree line. Close enough. So, to recap, to get a good enough coverage with 8 shield emitters, do the following. Go to one of the prime meridians on the planet, which are the thick lines going up to the poles, and find the point where the coordinates on the bottom left read 36 degrees north, or south. That's where the emitters should go. Do this in both directions on the same meridian, and then move on to the next. Only need 8 emitters in total. Now, here's the deal. These emitters take a lot of time to ramp up their output, and until then, they will slowly expand their coverage. So don't be surprised if you don't see an immediate result. And they take up a lot of power. Make sure you can afford the amount of juice these beasts will draw from your network. And lastly, I think it bears repeating. This shield coverage is only enough to prevent any further outposts from landing on a planet. If the central hive gets angry enough, and decides to attack, 8 shields will not be enough to keep them at bay. In that case, you will need proper defenses. Another base just landed. Seriously, we need to do something about these guys. I didn't even look, I just stumbled upon it randomly. As you can see from the orange circles around the power-related buildings, we are using more juice than we can generate. As I've said, these shield emitters take up a lot of power, and they will do so until they are fully charged. Now, our signal tower got destroyed not too long ago, so we need another one. Only my inventory was full of junk, so I had to spend a couple seconds trying to clear things out. Okay, that should be enough to last us for a while. Even if we lose one or two, we will have backups. Now we can go and put the dark fog in their place. As the enemy gains levels, the base is starting to become harder and harder to crack. I remember us easily demolishing these outposts in seconds. Now we need a sustained bombardment to make a dent. We should really consider setting up a dedicated ring of missile turrets, so moments like this can go faster. As I was flying to Minerva to take care of the outposts there, I made the decision to set up another planetary shield system on Vulcan as soon as I could. I will still try to leave Minerva unshielded, and use it as a dark fog farm one day, but Vulcan definitely needs some protection. Okay. We are free from the dark fog for now. Let's enjoy this moment while we can. The problem with setting up a shield coverage on Vulcan is the lack of power. As I've said, these emitters need a lot of juice, and we aren't exactly swimming in fusion reactors on this godforsaken desert right now. So, we either bring in some deuteron fuel rods from Juno, and set up a small power plant on this rock, or we use windmills. Ultimately, I went with the latter. The reason was that to maintain the charge in the emitters, they need a constant supply of power, and if for whatever reason the flow of fuel cells gets cut off, the shield will go down. We have no such issues with wind power. That thing will keep on working until it gets removed. It will take a lot longer to reach the charge levels to get the coverage we need, but once we get there, it will be more reliable. At least I hope so. There. We have a ring of windmills, and all 4 shield emitters are charging on the hemisphere. Thankfully, We can just copy paste the windmills over to the other side, and we just need to walk along the line to build them. And that should do it. We might need to come around to clear out any dark fog bases that slip in while the emitters slowly get up to power, but after, we will be free from those rude interruptions. Now, let's check how the shields are doing on Juno. Oh yeah. We have full coverage already, thanks to the robust power network present on the planet. From now on, no dark fog relay stations will be able to land, and we can do our grand work in peace. But let's not forget, we still left Minerva unshielded, so that is the only place the enemy can land. Strip mining that place will take some effort as a result, but I still want to give them a fighting chance, so we can set up a planet-wide farm there one day. With all that taken care of, I think we can focus on building more smelting arrays. We have the basics on the network, but we are still missing some items, like bricks, glass, silicon crystals, diamonds, etc. We should take care of those before we move on to building more assembler arrays. Not to mention the already existing setups that need some expanding. We might want to finalize those too before moving on the other stuff. Like the silicon for example. We just have a small stub of an array right now. But copy pasting the rest of the array over from the iron setup, and resetting the furnaces will complete the array, after which we can make a blueprint out of it. And we can take advantage of the individual building copy function to quickly reset the recipe assigned to the iron furnaces, so they start making silicon instead. Okay, one half done. Now we just copy it over to the other side, make sure everything's kosher, and it's all done. Okay, we have everything we need to finish the current backlog of constructions. Let's see if it's good enough to become a blueprint. Nope. We are missing 2 inserters somewhere. We should be okay at this point. And indeed we are. We have the correct number of buildings on the blueprint, so we can save it. I think we can try to deal with building a new array, instead of expanding on one of the small ones. We will need glass, so let's deal with that next. The only issue is the lack of raw stone on the logistics network, but that will be easily remedied later. As I walked by the fusion reactors, I noticed that they were still struggling to keep up with the shield emitters. I think it wouldn't hurt to build a couple more columns, just to give the power network a fighting chance. Yeah, that should tide us over for a while. Now we just need to place them. I think I'll stop here and leave the rest of the reactors in my inventory in case of emergencies. Next, I noticed that the organic crystals were lacking. Some of the labs at the end of the line weren't working. As it turns out, it was because of the lack of water. Easy, we just add more pumps. Okay, that should keep things going for a while. And it also sped up the acid production, so that's even better. Okay, I was about to start building the glass smelting, but then I got distracted. Time to get back to it. Okay, we still need to deal with some water before we have the room to place the template. First, make sure the tower is set correctly, before it start importing things we don't need. I really needed these inventory expansion upgrades. I've been having issues with things overflowing, so it's a most welcome change. For some reason the game didn't want to allow me to paste the recipes over these furnaces. After a little bit of trial and error, I just pasted them over to the next row, and from there it allowed me to do it. I don't remember the blueprint system behaving this way before, so I hope it gets fixed eventually. The icons for the silicon and the glass are very similar, but I think I managed to reset all of them. Okay, we have a lot of long-range power poles at this point, so we can go to the substation factory, make some, and we can finish the array. The item numbers are correct. While I did save this blueprint, there was still one thing missing. I forgot to set up the outgoing belt filters on the tower. Don't worry, I will catch it before the end, and redo the blueprint. Also, technically speaking, these blueprints aren't final. The towers are still missing a single crucial item among their list of stored materials. The warpers. We don't have those yet, but we will need to include them if we want to give the logistics vessels the capability to go to other star systems. And given that we will have a centralized smelting planet, they will need to go all over the star cluster to keep things running. So I might have been a bit too hasty with these blueprints now that I think about it. Might want to stop making them, and wait until we can assign those warpers to one of the resource slots. Anyways, after glass, the next smelting tower will be dedicated to making bricks. I think we can get away with only building one of these for the entirety of the playthrough. We only really need these bricks to make basic buildings, like furnaces, so we won't be required to make too many of them. Okay, time to pick up all the stuff we are missing. Building one of these arrays isn't cheap. Uh-oh. We need 230 belts, but only managed to pick up 227. The fact that we only managed to make this much since the last pickup tells me that the starter base is really starting to run out of steam. The blue magnet production is pretty much at a standstill at this point. Might be time to start really dismantling this whole place once and for all. For now, I just hand-fed the belt assembler to get the last couple we needed, but the next episode might be dedicated to doing some serious restructuring around here. And this is where I noticed that I didn't set the output belt filters on the towers, so the glass blueprints will have to be reprinted. But as I've said, we will stop making these from the next episode forward, at least until we can get our hands on some warpers at last. I only arrived to this conclusion while editing, so I still saved these last two in this episode. Okay, a nice and tidy stone brick furnace tower. If all goes well, this will be the only one we will ever build. Well, not really. We will need to move it over to Vulcan once we are ready to move smelting off Juno, but that should be the only exception. Now I quickly sorted out the output filters on the glass tower, saved the blueprint, and that was about it. Again, we have no raw stone present on the logistics network, so these arrays will lay dormant for a little bit, but it's good to know that they are ready to get to work as soon as needed. While I cannot check the state of the shield emitters on Vulcan if I'm not physically on the planet, the lack of dark fog bases anywhere on it was an encouraging sign. There is one on Minerva though. Well, that's the only place they can land at this point, so I don't blame them. Anyways, I think this is all we have time for. In the next episode, I think we will need to spend some time, and systematically go through the entire starter base, and slowly dismantle it. We will need to set up a couple towers to still keep the current mall functioning. I don't want to spend countless hours on making a replacement just yet. But we should have everything it needs on the network, so it's only a matter of replacing the local assemblers with towers, which will bring in the materials from all over the planet. After that, we might want to spend a bit of time, and start strip mining Vulcan. I would rather not build anything over any resource deposit if I can help it. I want to deplete them completely before. Good thing we should be able to do it in peace on that planet at this point. Minerva though, that place will be a bit more interesting, once all the enemy bases are concentrated there. Anyways, if you haven't done it already, I would love it if you subscribe to the channel, and clicking the like button will also help letting me know that the video was worth making. If you would like to help me make a living off this one day, please consider becoming a channel member, where you will get an early access to the videos as I make them. And if you want to give a one-time donation, you can find a link to my Ko-fi page in the description. Thank you for your support, and I will see you in the next one.